Welcome to Gartner ThinkCast. I'm Karen Stokes Lockhart. Today, we're tackling one of the most high-stakes moments in a CIO's year, presenting to the board. CIOs spend countless hours preparing decks. But despite all the effort, many boards still aren't confident in the value of their tech investments. Why? The story isn't landing. Today, Managing Vice President and Gartner Fellow Tina Nunno shows you how to fix that. In this episode, pulled from her webinar on board presentation prep, Tina breaks down how to anchor every board message to shareholder value, sharpen your narrative with a simple framework, and slash prep time without sacrificing impact. You'll learn how to ensure that your next board presentation sparks confidence instead of confusion. Now, here's Tina.
It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to be here with you today to talk about a topic which is near and dear to my heart. I'm presenting to the board of directors. I spend a significant amount of my time working with our clients, helping them prep for board presentations and ensuring that in their presentations, they're saying what they think they're saying, always easier said than done. Regardless of your experience in presenting to a board, or if you're listening in because you actually help your CIO or another executive prepare that board presentation, I hope this content will be useful to you and you'll find one or two things that you can take with you. One of the most important things that is critical in board presentations is what we communicate. Many clients will ask me, what should the font size be? How many words should there be on a page? How many graphics? What's the density? What should the flow be? What's the story? And I'm here to tell you that the most important part of the story is this. Is that the key to presenting to the board with less pain, more gain is relentlessly linking IT investments to shareholder value, linking it relentlessly. In spite of all of the work that so many CIOs and their teams put into these board presentations, hours and hours of prep, study amounts of work, when we survey board members, non-executive directors, about how they feel about technology and how much confidence they have in the value of their current technology investments, 76% express a lack of confidence. Only 24% said they were confident or very confident in the value of their IT investments. So I'm here to share with you and encourage you that if you get one thing right in the presentation, please get the value story right. And I'm here to share with you a framework and ways of thinking about this that I hope will help you. Because if you get the value story right, you could practically write the presentation in crayon and you would be successful. Please don't do it in crayon. I wouldn't encourage you to do that. But what I hope you will find is that when you get this right, the rest of the presentation, quite frankly, doesn't matter anywhere near as much. And the quality of your board conversations will go up. If your presentation is beautiful and elegant, but it doesn't include the right value story, no matter how beautifully you've put it together, it won't matter as much and you won't have the impact that you want to have. So I'll talk a little bit today about how to focus on how much value you provided in the past, how much value you're providing today through technology investments, and what your forecast is for how you will provide value in the future. So here's today's reality. Today's reality is no one's happy with board presentation preparation or the current board content. Boards tend to underestimate the prep time of the C-suite by more than 33%. Most NEDs believe that you spend an average of 13.2 hours preparing for each board meeting. The reality is closer to 20. And the range here is extraordinary, right? The range here is extraordinary relative to the low end, and the high end is absolutely incredible here with, often days and days and days being spent in board preparation. When we ask boards how reasonable they feel the pre-read is for the board meeting, most board members say on average, it's 2 times more pages and content than reasonable. On average, they receive 147 pages of pre-read, but they believe that 71 pages is a reasonable number. And that's for the entire board pre-read pack. Also, 57% believe there's not enough discussion. They believe the ideal percentage is 45% presentation, 55% discussion. So I encourage you to think about your own board packs and the amount of work that you're putting into them and the length. In this case, specific content and content quality is infinitely more important than length. And I'll talk a little bit about how you can achieve this. Here are some of the challenges relative to CIO board preparation that I hear so often from our clients. First and foremost, virtually all CIOs need their direct reports, their teams, to help them prepare the board content. CIOs are constantly going out to their teams and to their divisions and saying, please give me the stories, give me the right stories, give me the examples, tell me what's going on, tell me where we're having an impact. And this tends to be a bit of a struggle because frequently the CIO has only a specific amount of experience with the board. If it's a newer CIO, they may be new to board presentations and they're not sure really what the board wants. Even if they're very experienced, often time in front of the board is extremely limited. Some board presentations are as short as 15 minutes. In other cases, it's 30 or an hour, but even CIOs have relatively limited board exposure, the same as every other executive out there. When it comes to the CIO's direct reports, they have even less exposure. They don't necessarily know the board mindset, and CIOs often don't know how to help them. In spite of their best attempts, how do we help them get more efficient at this? And frequently, the teams struggle to construct the right board level messages. So what ends up happening, as many of our clients tell me, as the CIO, you end up doing a tremendous amount of rework of these board presentations. We get the draft, I rework it, I'm trying to figure out how to make this all work. So lots and lots of pain, minimal gain. Again, if 76% of board members are saying they're unsure about the current value of their IT investments, we're not getting a lot of gain from all of that work. But I believe by doing some fairly simple things, you can shift that equation very quickly and get the impact that you want. So the key to less pain, more gain is relentlessly linking to shareholder value. I'm going to go through 3 key components of this. First, the board mindset, being very clear what the board mindset is so you can help your team help you with the preparations by knowing exactly what the board is looking for and how to think about them. Secondly, a value framework, a framework that can actually help you tell the right level story in linking to shareholder value. You can either use this one as a starting point or similar ones. As long as you're using a value framework, you're much more likely to be successful. And then simple templates to help construct stories, messages, and strategic portfolios. And I'm sharing this information both from having reviewed hundreds and hundreds of our client board presentations, as well as from my own experience as a nonprofit board member and as a certified board member. So I'll share with you as much as I can that I hope will make your lives easier. So let's talk about the board mindset first and foremost. What is the board mindset? What in the world do they want? So in our survey, we asked boards what they wish that C-suites knew about working with the board. The number one response we got from boards was that boards want you to think of them as advisors and of partners, right? Think of them as advisors and partners. Now, this is largely true. Boards are extremely senior people. They've frequently been C-suite executives in their own businesses. They want you to be successful, and they obviously want significant conversation, and they want to advise you. Now, well, all of this is true. Unfortunately, in my experience, this isn't helpful in helping your teams create the story for the board presentation, whether you're presenting the strategy, the IT strategy, or the AI strategy, or here's the current status of our results, or if you're asking for a significant investment related to whether it be AI, the topic of the day, cyber risk, another topic of the day, the annual budget overall. Regardless of what you're asking for, this doesn't necessarily help you craft the story that you want to craft. So how can we rethink the board to make this easier? So instead of thinking of them exclusively as advisors, here's how I want you to think of them, right? I want you to think of the board as your bookie. I want you to think of them as your gambling bookie. What does your bookie do? Frequently, your bookie gives you the stakes for you to gamble with, and they set the odds. They say, here's the kind of return that I want from our investments. Most board members are, in fact, investors, whether you're in a private company and it's private equity, or if you're publicly traded, they're the investors. If you're in a not-for-profit, they're the key stakeholders. So they've set the terms of engagement, and particularly in a not-for-profit, frequently they have donated a lot of money. So they want to know that they're getting a return on their investment. It is all about show me the money. So based on this, if you teach your teams to think of the board as your gambling bookie, now we can say, okay, what are the questions that they're likely to ask? So they're going to ask questions such as this. First and foremost, are we making the right bets? Are we investing in the right things that will get us the return on investment? Just placing those bets. Do we trust them? Many boards function very heavily on trust. They evaluate the C-suite executives and they ask themselves, do I trust that person as well as the communications that they're sharing? And why should I trust them? And what are the odds we're playing? Are we doing a lot of high-risk bets or are we being extremely conservative, right? Are we playing roulette or am I playing blackjack? The odds of those games are very different. So which games are we playing? Which games should we play? What's the mix of investments we should have based on the risk approach that we're comfortable with? If you're leading in your market space and in your industry, you may be taking lots of big bets. You might be investing heavily in AI. You may be experimenting a lot, doing a lot of innovation. If on the other hand, you're more of a fast follower, you may say, look, we don't really want to have a lot of big, ugly investments that we don't know will pay out. We're going to be much more conservative. We're only going to invest when we know there will be a significant rate of return. We're not going to innovate too much. And that's a reasonable approach. The question is, do you know the approach of your organization and do your investments match? Very importantly, when are these bets going to pay out? Are they long-term? Are they short-term? What's the cadence of these investments and will they help us hit the strategic goals? And if we lose, very important question, if these things don't pay out, is the marker in the debt covered? Another way of saying this, I'm actually first-generation Italian, so this won't surprise you. It's like, hey, which limb do you want broken, right? Who is going to hurt because something went wrong here? Whose head will be on the line if our investments are not paying out? So we would prefer you're on the paying out side than on the not paying out, but we all know that periodically things go wrong. And who is going to be held accountable if we don't get the payout that we want? So by thinking about your board more as the bookie, you can help focus your team on what the board cares about the most. Because if we don't tell them the answers to these questions, they don't care about anything else. They literally don't care about anything else. So let's talk about value, the payout. One of the other major challenges we have frequently in technology is being able to articulate the value of our IT investments. And so getting the value categories right and sorted in a way that fits for your organization and your industry can be incredibly important. And in my experience, there are two sides to every coin, to the value coin. First is helping the board understand the cost dynamic relative to IT, because IT costs do not flow like every other investment. They don't flow like every other asset. And help them understand the rate of return and the time to return, because it is, again, not the same as for every other asset. It's your company buys a building, that asset depreciates very differently. The cost model is very different than if you're buying something like an ERP system, or if you're buying any significant investment in AI today. So helping the board understand the flow and the cadence is critical.
You don't have time to waste searching for answers. Meet Ask Gartner, our client's AI-powered gateway to Gartner's trusted business and technology insights. No more digging through lengthy reports or generic web results. Want to benchmark your digital transformation? Looking to start piloting agentic AI? Need strategies to respond to cybersecurity threats? Ask Gartner delivers clear, executive-ready recommendations in seconds. It's where AI stops guessing and starts guiding. Discover how Ask Gartner can work for you at gartner.com/askgartner.
So this is a value framework that I've recently published that you might find useful as a starting point. Different investments have different levels of yields for the business. Some of them generate revenue and they're competitive. Some of them are bottom line costs, and I'll talk about this in some detail. Some of them are purely infrastructure and some are innovation and disruption. The math behind each of these relative to cost is completely different. And the math relative to yield is also significantly different. And so I create this to help you create messages where you can literally follow the dots in the dartboard to hopefully help you create messages. Let me explain this briefly. The first is innovation and disruption investments. I'm going to go through some of the pain points and some of the gain points here. Pain points, board pressure on AI. Boards are bullish about AI right now. I'm sure many of you have experienced this. Some of you are noticing it, where boards are actually asking, are we going fast enough? Are we going fast enough? Are we investing enough? Now, again, there's a little part of me that's cynical relative to this. Most board members, again, are investors. So most of them likely own stock in AI right now, and they would love to see that pay out. And they're trying to find the balance between being a great board member for your enterprise and getting the right investments for your enterprise, but also, again, feeling very bullish about the investments that they've made in AI. So the tremendous board pressure on AI, and the reality of much of particularly generative AI, the current generation that we're in, is that much of this is still in the innovation space with relatively uncertain return. When we look at more traditional AI, the return on that has been more well established, more well proven. But on Gen AI and the generation that we're in, there's a lot of innovation still going on. A lot of the return is still relatively uncertain. And at the moment, boards are really impatient with the time to return. So what are some of the gain points? Here, what we need to make clear to the board is when we're investing in innovation, we're taking a big gamble. And the big gamble that we're taking, these are high odds, is we're either going to evolve the enterprise or we're going to transform it. And what are we going to evolve or transform? Either the business model of the organization, our core processes, and or our products, right? We're going to either evolve or transform. The key thing we have to be clear with the board about is, number one, how much are we investing in this space? And the reality is that these investments, by and large, are like R&D, right? They're like research and development. What's the rate of return on an R&D budget? 0, right? It's nothing. Because we're experimenting, we're learning, we're testing hypotheticals. We're trying to figure out what are the use cases for our business, what is going to work. And so as a result, our forecast return is 0. And the key conversation we need to have with the board is how much do we need to invest in innovation and disruption to either maintain our position in the market or extend it, right? So if your company is known for innovation, you're likely already spending a lot in this bucket. On the other hand, if you're a fast follower or a slow follower, you're likely going to evolve more slowly and spend less money here. If you're a government entity, chances are, unless you're something like a DARPA, you're going to spend very little in this particular space because you're using taxpayer money. So how much should you be spending as a business is the critical conversation, but also helping the board understand the nature of these investments and the math is incredibly critical. Now, if those use cases are successful, often they will roll into the next quadrant. So what's the next quadrant? The next quadrant are investments that are competitive differentiators. In this particular category, what matters the most? These are the investments you make that determine whether or not customers come through your door. They're the reason why people are customers of you and not a competitor in your industry. It's what makes you unique. It's what draws customers to you. Frequently, these are elements that you actually market heavily to your customer or your potential customer base. These investments are designed to either retain revenue or increase revenue. They should have a direct impact on revenue growth or wallet retention. So what are these kinds of investments? Frequently, they impact the customer experience. They're often an evolution of new products and services, or they help you expand the market. Sometimes these are investments we make to actually they can be acquisitions, they can be new products that expand into a new market, but we can draw a straight line between these investments and top line growth, right? We can forecast new revenue or wallet retention as a result of this. So what are the pain points in this category? Pain point number one, IT is often reluctant to take credit for the differentiation. Interestingly, it's still a strong cultural reality that in many businesses I work with, the business unit will want to take credit for things like top line growth, where IT will be asked to only talk about the cost and being on time and on budget, even if the IT department did the majority of the work. So if this is happening to you in your organization, I encourage you to revisit this mental model. The reality is that, you know, no business works if they don't work like a team. And that means everyone gets to take credit for their part in the success. No one does anything alone, right? We're either going to swim together or we're going to sink together. But particularly if IT has done a tremendous amount of work, if you report the business benefits of the work you've done in the board meeting and your colleague does it too, fabulous, right? There should be room for both, or do it together, whatever works most effectively in your culture. But please take credit for that. Secondly, accounting rules often make reporting impact challenging. And here's what I mean by this. Accounting rules tend to look at technology as an expense. And so in some boards and in some executive teams, they tend to push a little to say, well, look, you're an expense. We'll talk about you as an expense. We'll think of you as an expense. But unfortunately, accounting rules are not accurate relative to this. What I want you to think about, I would encourage you to please think about is this. When you're standing in front of the board, they are asking themselves the following question. How do you impact the three financial statements I care about the most? Cash flow, income statement, balance sheet. They want to know how you're impacting those and which line items specifically are you impacting. And so even if accounting rules tend to look at IT as expense, don't be afraid to show your impact on cash and on income, because we all know you're having that impact. And so whenever possible, please take credit for that and draw a straight line to the financials. This is why the third point here of the pain point is so important. Proxy metrics that fall short. I'll give you my favorite example of this. In IT, we tend to use a lot of what I refer to as proxy metrics. They fall short of telling the full story of the business impact that you've had. My favorite one is something like customer satisfaction or net promoter score. I can't tell you the number of presentations that I've seen that have metrics such as this. We helped improve the customer satisfaction score from 3.5 to 4.2. Now, at face value, that sounds good, doesn't it? What doesn't it tell me? Right? It's a proxy metric. It doesn't tell me if you helped retain revenue because you improved customer satisfaction, or if you helped increase revenue and increase wallet share because of it. You didn't tell me that. I didn't know how much you spent to increase that score from 3.5 to 4.2. I don't know if we're talking about our biggest company, the customers in the company that I deeply care about, or if this impacted smaller customers in the company. And as a result, what's the challenge the board has? The board doesn't understand the impact because we haven't drawn the straight line to revenue retention or to increasing revenue. Please draw the straight line, connect the dots for your board. Don't make them guess. Because what's the discussion I want the board to have with you? The discussion I want the board to have with you is, hey, you invested in technology. You helped increase customer satisfaction, and that got us more wallet share. Thank you for that. That's fabulous. If I give you more money, can you make more revenue for us? That's the conversation we want to have. We don't want them wondering what the metric means. We want to draw the through line for them whenever possible, please. So a few gain points. Again, connect the dots to the through line. Describe and demonstrate customer-facing impacts, right? Show how this impacted the customers in particular, because almost everything in this category has to end with customer. And compare your IT to that of your competitors. Whenever possible, tell that story. We're investing here, we're having this impact, we're either ahead of our competitors, we're behind our competitors relative to how we're engaging with customers. Next category, commodities and operations. These are the investments that you make because you have to. They help you run the business. But you could be world-class in these investments, and they don't help you bring a single additional customer through the door. Often these are really back office applications, things like HR systems, financial systems. And for some businesses, supply chain, and other businesses, supply chain is a differentiator. Depends on what industry you're in. Which, by the way, is an important note I hope you'll take away, is different capabilities will be in different quadrants based on your industry and how you compete. So when we're spending money, we're trying to usually do one of two things. We're either trying to focus on cost reduction, right, or improving productivity. So depending on which one we're doing, it actually impacts the math. And here, usually we're either focusing on IT optimization, business optimization, or scalable growth. And I'll talk about this. Some of the big pain points here. Persistent conflict between IT and the rest of the business relative to how targets are set here. So one of my least favorite things to see happen in any company is the CEO or the board being very well-meaning will say, hey, everyone takes, say, a 5% budget cut because we've got to cut costs. Okay. Sounds like a reasonable thing to do. But what ends up happening? What often ends up happening is IT has the same budget cut as everyone else, and the rest of the business units will now come to the CIO and say, hey, we need technology so that we can cut costs and be more productive. So let's spend some money on technology, which of course would increase the IT budget while reducing the budget in the rest of the business. When the cost targets are equal across the board, or when IT is cutting at the same time as the rest of the business, we frequently have a financial problem here, which leads to a tremendous amount of tension. There's also frequently denial regarding how business growth impacts IT costs. If your business is growing, they're selling more, or they're doing mergers and acquisitions, guess what's going to happen to IT costs? They're going to go up, right? It doesn't mean you've been inefficient. It means you're scaling the business, you're growing the business. This math we're often in denial about, and it's critical to point out. And then, of course, the third, difficulty realizing productivity savings in real terms. Massive tension, obviously, with AI relative to productivity. When will we see the return? Are we going to lay off people? A remarkable tension here, right? If we think of AI and other IT investments as a way to lay off people, we all know that in most organizations, that doesn't really happen. And frequently we've seen in the research now, if people are laying off folks right now, it's not because of AI. They may be saying it is, but they're laying it off just because they want to lay off folks and they need to cut costs. So difficulty realizing the productivity savings is a challenge. Frequently we're benefiting the way people work. So what do we frequently need to do here? Here we need to point out that frequently if we're investing in IT to improve productivity, we're optimizing the business and how the business works, but the IT budget will increase. We need to point out that math. It's absolutely critical. In other cases, what we're doing is we want to reduce the cost of IT. That's fine. We can frequently do things like perhaps outsourcing or some type of optimization or consolidation. But all this tends to do, folks, is frequently what this does is it reduces either the unit cost or the transaction cost of IT, and we achieve some economy of scale. But because the consumption of IT is ever going up, right? More data, more processing, more consumption, then again, the IT budget continues to go up. It rarely spikes down unless we're doing something incredibly radical. Again, very important for the board to understand that dynamic.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode of ThinkCast. That was Managing Vice President Tina Nunno. To learn more about this topic and to watch the full webinar, follow the links in the notes. ThinkCast will be back wherever you listen to podcasts a week from today. In the meantime, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with a colleague so neither of you will miss it.
ThinkCast is a production of Gartner. This podcast may not be reproduced or distributed in any form without Gartner's permission. It consists of the opinions of Gartner's research organization, which should not be construed as statements of fact. Content provided by other speakers is expressly the views of the speaker and/or their organization. While the information contained in this podcast has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, Gartner disclaims all warranties as to the accuracy, completeness, or adequacy of such information. Although Gartner research may address legal and financial issues, Gartner does not provide legal or investment advice, and its research should not be construed or used as such.